Hello.
Hi, this is Gabe Newell.
Hey, Mr. Newell. Ben Rogers. How are you?
Good.
Can you see us and hear us okay?
Yeah.
All right. Everybody wave. This is my sports and entertainment marketing class. So most people in here are juniors and seniors. Are there any sophomores in here? I don't think. Oh, a couple lucky ones. A couple lucky sophomores. And some freshmen?
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to talk about you guys. We really appreciate the time. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
All right, great.
Can you hear me fine?
Yep. We appreciate the time that you're taking out of your busy schedule to talk with us. This is a new thing that our school is kind of piloting, and you are kind of the first business that we've talked to. So we try to get with the Pro Football Hall of Fame and do some other things, but quite honestly, most of these guys in here wanted to talk to somebody in the video game industry. So that's why we're talking to you. So we appreciate it.
Hey, go Seahawks.
Go Seahawks. I'm a Bears fan, so I'll just pretend that I didn't hear that. Although the Bears look good, though. You know. All right, if you could, the way that we kind of thought this would be great to do is if you could just, if you don't mind, give us some background on Valve and just kind of some general knowledge stuff, and then if you don't mind, we could open it up to these guys for some questions. Does that sound
Sure.
good?
Yeah, it sounds good. How many of you guys play video games? Okay. How many of you played any of Valve's video games? Yeah, that's pretty useful. So, say again? So we started the company in 1996. It was founded by Mike Harrington and myself. We were good friends who were working at Microsoft. We'd known each other since the early 1980s. For us, it was a new venture. We really had no idea whether we were going to be any good at it or not. I mean, if you spent your career building operating systems and spreadsheets, the idea that you can build an entertainment product is pretty you're reasonable to be skeptical. So the most likely outcome was that we were going to fail and then have to go back to our old bosses and plead for our jobs. We ended up being way more successful than we had any right to be with our first product, which was Half-Life. The success we had with Half-Life, which is a single-player game, and it behaves a lot like a feature film does in terms of how you market it, how you do audience development, what its shelf life is like, gave us the opportunity to get into online gaming. And online multiplayer gaming behaves a lot more like a sport. So if you look at how Half-Life and those kinds of products are marketed, it looks not that different than how, say, Super 8, the new movie from J.J. Abrams, gets marketed. But if you look at how something like Counter-Strike or Team Fortress 2 behaves in the marketplace, it looks a lot more like how the NFL markets and manages its properties. From there, we really saw that there was this opportunity to have a direct connection with our customers and to build systems that took advantage of that connection, that it was a two-way connection, and that it also needed to recognize that the value of the experience was generated as much by the customers as it was by us. This isn't that different than the issues the NFL itself is going through right now, trying to figure out, it has its traditional distribution partners, but it knows that there's a future where it's providing more of its products and services directly to consumers, not just in terms of people showing up at stadiums, but in terms of people watching videos, or have any of you guys use NFL.com?
Oh yeah. Yep.
So do any of you look at the audio or video products that the NFL has tried putting out? So one of the key things on the football rebroadcasts is they have all of the comments that people have created, and that those drive what they call a heat map. And the heat map essentially tells other fans what the most interesting parts of the games are. So here's an example where they're recognizing the value of what the fans are actually creating, and you can just go and click through on the highest levels on the heat map and get a really good idea of what the most interesting parts of the game were. And that's being done without any editorial decision making by somebody at the NFL.com.
Wow.
So in a lot of ways, the issues that are facing people in the league management are similar to the kinds of issues we're facing in the game space. So we saw that opportunity to build those kinds of systems, just like the NFL is trying to build those today. Nowadays, we're trying to look at things like, how do we transition from entertainment as a product to entertainment as a service? That actually means a bunch of very specific things in terms of how we build our products and connect to our customers. And we're also interested in how we can assist other developers using those services. So that's a quick background about the company. We're about 275 people now. We just finished Portal 2. It's pretty much put to bed, and we're just waiting for final approvals and to get the discs manufactured. Our next product is going to be a game called Dota 2, which will be out later this year. So hopefully that gives you some background on questions that you guys have. I also have a list of questions that you guys sent, so I can also address some of those.
Yeah, that'd be great. What are you more comfortable doing? You want to go through the ones you have, or they basically have a lot of the same questions that you have. There's a couple additions, I think. We have a couple students. Go ahead.
I'd rather listen to their questions now.
All right. Why don't we start with, I'll go through, you guys just say your name and then fire off, one question at a time, and then we'll move on.
My name is Michael. How far can a company go to avoid losing profits due to free game updates, community services, or vice versa, to milk out to customers to the point that they stop paying for company products? For example, like Team Fortress 2, they introduced a weapon buying system. How did this affect the outcome of the game and the profits from it?
So what you want to do is, part of the problem is that there aren't any good examples for how to do this stuff. So we have these legacies of what we learned about in the brick and mortar era, and almost everything that we learned from selling products through retail stores ends up leading you in the wrong direction when it comes to how you want to do things when you're directly connected to customers. So here's a simple example. When we work on sales, we try to encourage people, our partners and ourselves, to knock as much off the price as you can. So traditionally, if you did that in the retail channel, all you'd be doing is sort of cannibalizing yourself, right? You'd be encouraging people to buy the product now rather than buying it in the future. And you'd also see a lot of elasticity. So if you drop the price by half, you double your sales. And so it wasn't really clear that you were doing anybody any good by fiddling with the price. When you're selling a product directly online, though, and you drop the price by 75%, you'll actually increase your total gross revenue by a factor of 40, okay? So it's not that you're selling 40 more units, you're actually, 40 times as many units, you're actually generating 40 times as much gross revenue. Okay, that's a completely unpredicted occurrence. And then, after the fact, you find out that sales, rather than going down after you return to sort of the baseline price, sales will actually be higher after you return to the baseline price. So you're not simply going out into the future and capturing a bunch of sales from the future earlier, you're actually somehow increasing the demand for your product by running a sale, the total absolute demand for your product. That's a very unusual phenomenon that you wouldn't learn about by selling boxes through traditional retail distribution. So TF2 is a product that we use for a lot of experiments. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to change enough variables so that our customers can show us what matters to them and what doesn't matter to them, right? So we don't know what the right thing to do is, and we accept the fact that we have to go with our customers and discover what the right thing to do is. So everything that we're doing really with TF2 is designed to teach us more about what they like and what they don't like. And part of the problem, as you guys will find, is that if you ask people what they would do versus what they actually do, they aren't necessarily the same, right? So you can't just simply say, what would you do if we did this? You actually have to go and do it and find out. The really concrete example that I know of is back when I was at Microsoft and we were trying to figure out what software was actually installed on people's machines. If you asked people what they had, they basically lied. If you ask people what kind of software that they have installed, it's always things that sound good, like educational software for our children and productivity software so I can do my work when I get home. And the reality is they have a bunch of video games and porn on their home systems. And nobody will ever tell you that, right? So the difference, you just have to recognize that that in reporting behaviors or predicting future behaviors, that's usually not nearly as useful as actually just running the experiment and finding out. So with TF2, we try a bunch of stuff. We say, okay, we're going to put out a bunch of different options for people to purchase. And then they come back and they do this weird thing where the number one most purchased item in TF2 was the most expensive item in the store.
Wow.
Okay? The second highest unit volume item in the store, and actually also the second highest gross revenue, was the cheapest item in the store. So what does that tell you? Well, it tells you need to run a bunch more experiments to try to figure out what customers like and what customers don't like. And one of the things that leads us to believe is to think of pricing as being a service. Okay? That sounds kind of weird. Pricing as a service. Well, brick and mortar teaches you that pricing is sort of a broadcast mentality. One price for everybody, right? And it turns out that what people want is an optimal for them set of trade-offs between what they get and how they create value for it. Okay? So here's a concrete example. Most of you guys have played multiplayer games on the internet, right? Yes? How many of you played Counter-Strike or Call of Duty or Team Fortress 2? Okay. So here's the weird thing about those games. Right now, who's ever played with somebody who's a total jerk on one of those games? Okay? And how many people know that there are friends who, when they go online, they want to play with those people because they're a lot of fun? Okay? Those two people are creating different sets of value for everybody else, and they should be charged accordingly. The person who, when he or she starts playing, a bunch of other people join their team, that person, you might even think about giving the product to them for free. The person who is hated and everybody else leaves, you might want to make that person watch a bunch of ads to help compensate for the negative externalities they create. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yes. Yeah.
So you want to value people and essentially create different ways for different people to create value. For example, the jerk guy or girl might put up a server that other people can play on. And that's a way for them to create value for the overall community. The person who everybody likes should receive some affinity or status, right? They should be a friend of the developer or a friend of the game, or they should have some other benefit. So what we're trying to figure out right now is how you can create sort of a custom package for each person. Some people want to pay the least amount of money and are willing to value their time at a very low rate. Other people value their time really highly and so are perfectly happy to give money in order to end up in the same place. So rather than thinking about the ways that people inject value into this overall gaming community as being one size fits all, and the way that monetization occurs, you want to create something that's completely custom to each person. that much we know, and we're just only now starting to find some of the different ways that make that possible. Okay? When we look around for good role models for this, they don't really exist. This really is something that we're sort of having to discover, and so we force ourselves to try to be as quantitative as possible, simply because anytime we measure something, we end up being smarter about it. And we also try to be as predictive as possible because it forces us to expose our ignorance. One of the problems that we had is everybody here at Valve is a super genius after the fact. Everybody here can explain why something occurred. The problem is very few people can predict what's going to happen before it happens. And we found that it was a really useful exercise in exposing our own ignorance when we tried to create situations in which we would predict what would happen.
It's like the stock market. We're talking about the rapper 50 Cent. A lot of these guys listen to him, and he has this company H&H Imports, and it opened up at like 4 cents, and he started tweeting about how awesome it is. Well, today it's at like $1.69. I mean, it's ridiculous, and it's all about that. Man, if I would have known that, we all would have threw our money in at 4 cents and been well off right now. So, yeah, that's
one of the things you'll notice about stock market analysis is everybody can explain something after the fact,
right.
And they always sound incredibly confident in terms of, well, the market's reacting to news on the unemployment front. But none of those guys who are now explaining after the fact made the bet prospectively,
right.
So they really are just making it up, right? When you look at 99% of what passes for commentary on the stock market, it's all retrospective, and it doesn't tell you what's going to happen next. Unless something tells you what's going to happen next, it's just a story that people tell each other, probably for entertainment value. And unless you're predicting the future, it's pretty useless.
Right.
Next, that was a very long answer to a very simple question.
All right, Michael, you do another one, and then we'll pass it on to somebody else.
Are you happy with the changes in Valve in last year as a business?
So that really sort of goes to what I think about when I'm managing the company, and I think our customers are really pretty happy right now. I think the people who work here are having a good time in terms of enjoying their work, not being too stressed out, feeling connected to their customers. One thing I'm worried about is the amount of stress that we put on some of the families. When you're running a business for the long run, sooner or later that's going to bite you. You can't ruin people's home lives in order to benefit your business, or it blows up in the long run. Right now we seem to be a little out of balance in some people's lives in terms of, we're not telling them to work on weekends, but people are working on the weekends, and we need to figure out how to sort of mitigate that. So one of the things we do that helps buffer that is we take all of the families on a trip each year, and it sort of gives everybody a chance to connect with other people at the company and to feel part of it and to yell at me, and it seems to, and that's coming up pretty soon. I'm sure I'll have lots of opportunities to talk to people with their families to sort of get a better handle on how that's working. And those really are the things that we worry about. We're not a publicly traded company, so I don't care what analysts say. I don't have to view them as a constituency. We fund our own projects, so I don't have to worry about how the bank or whomever feels about our business decisions. It actually makes our business a lot simpler to run, to be structured that way. The financials of our business are great. They're sort of ridiculous. I don't really know how to think about them because all of the ways in which you worry about company financials, they were great a year ago and they've gotten a lot better since. So I mainly worry about other things rather than worrying about the financial results of the company.
Cool. Do you have one, Williams, or you want to go down to Evan? Go ahead, Evan.
Hi, my name's Evan. Did you imagine Steam would have the user base it currently has from its inception?
So the way that we got into Steam was really by listening to customers. So it seems like in the late 90s and early aughts that our customers had a clearer idea of the impact the internet was going to have than most of the executives at game developers and game publishers. You'd have these weird conversations where you'd be just chatting to some 14-year-old game player at a trade show, and they had a much better idea of the impact of the internet that the internet was going to have than the senior vice president of channel marketing, at a game publisher. And they seemed to understand that it was going to impact the design, support, marketing, distribution, sales of everything about the games business way before the rest, way before the people on the production side understood that. So listening to them, it was pretty clear that there was an opportunity to do something that was really large. So if you were listening to them, yeah, you would expect that it was going to be a big shot in the arm to the games industry, and that all of us were going to benefit by having this much better way of connecting and providing value to our customers, that it was going to grow the market. It wasn't just going to move bits off of optical media into bits over wires, that it was actually going to give us all opportunities to build better experiences for our customers.
Get another one there.
Yeah. Do you think the current state of the economy discourages companies from releasing innovative games such as Portal, Heavy Rain, or BioShock, for example?
Not really. I mean, actually at this time I would say it's easier for smaller projects to develop an audience than it ever has before. So if you look at the independent game scene, I think there's a lot of super interesting stuff that's happening there. And it's now possible for them to reach a worldwide audience without having to convince a bunch of intermediaries that they should publish their game or carry their game. So I'd say that sort of these large economic fundamentals are dwarfed by the efficiency that the internet has enabled for guys like Jonathan Blow or Super Meat Boy, or all of the indie guys are able to develop and deliver products that never would have been possible several years ago. So I think innovation is less. The deck is stacked less against novelty than it was a few years ago.
Who's next? Anybody? Who's got one? Man, can I get you guys to be this quiet in class and shy? Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Brad, and I was just wondering, what's your favorite game that you have made out of all the games?
That we've made?
Yeah, like
Portal 2. I think Portal 2 is our most confident design that we've done so far. I think it's a great game. Yeah, I'm really proud of what the work that everybody did on it.
How about your favorite game you've ever played?
It's still Mario 64, actually.
Really?
I still think that was just an astonishing.
Now hold on. Has anybody ever heard of that game in here? Okay. All right. So then show our age then. Cool.
How many of you have played Mario 64?
Wow.
How many of you were really disappointed in Mario Galaxy? Not as bad as Mario Sunshine, but in the back with a blue and white check shirt. Why don't you ask a question?
What's your name?
My name's Jared. How many years of college did it take to get into this? I don't know if you answered that already, but.
So I was at Harvard. I was 3 years in, and I went to visit my brother. He was working at what at the time was the third largest software developer on the east side of Lake Washington. So he had to work a bunch because it was a brand new job for him. So I was just hanging out at work, and a guy named Steve Ballmer got mad because I was bugging Dan, so he told me to go do something useful. And a couple days later, they gave me a job offer. So I never went back to school. So that was my history. It's not exactly a normal work history. That's how a lot of us ended up at Microsoft in the early 80s, though. Ballmer never finished business school. Bill never finished his undergraduate degree. Richard Brody never finished his undergraduate degree. Charles Simoni was a male prostitute who escaped from Eastern Europe, who happened to be the guy who wrote the first compiler behind the Iron Curtain. You know, we all had sort of weird life histories getting to Microsoft.
How about your employees now? I mean, is there like a couple guys in here are going to Full Sail next year?
Yep.
What kind of education do you require for some of your employees?
So the main characteristic we look for is the ability to create something, develop an audience around it, measure their reactions to something you've created, and then change what you built to reflect that, and measure again how much of a difference you made. That iteration cycle with customer feedback is the most important characteristic for somebody to be successful right now. And the ability to demonstrate that through a portfolio, through a website, through a mod, that's what we really look for. And I also think it's what a lot of other companies are looking for when they're thinking about who's going to work well for them, is you have to actually act almost like a CEO yourself in terms of understanding an audience, understanding a market, building a product, taking feedback about the product, evolving the product, communicating about the product. More and more we see that each person that we hire has to be able to do that, even if they're just going to be narrowly contributing, you know, in marketing or product development or support or QA. That people who have demonstrated that ability previously are going to be the people who are most likely to be successful. And that more than whether you go to an Ivy League school or whether or not you take computer science classes or drawing classes, that's the thing that for us is the key indicator of future success.
So essentially then, you were saying that, and I'm sorry guys if I'm stealing all your stuff here, but you talk with a lot of, you know, like you mentioned, a 14-year-old gamer. I mean, if he...
Mr. Shriver, please call extension 2000. Mr. Shriver, call 2000.
Sorry. Where's I going? Oh, 14-year-old, you know, a gamer, if he knows his stuff, essentially the age really doesn't matter, or I mean, could that be true? I mean, if he was good?
We see something that's sort of odd where, you know, age sort of in some cases negatively correlates with success. I mean, the students in your class are far more connected with a bunch of technological, you know, like you're much more likely to use social networking than your parents are. Right? You're much more likely to understand the dynamics of community building than the previous generation. You know, it's not that they couldn't, it's just that, you know, technology seems to be stretching people faster. And it's actually kind of weird to look at, you know, kids in junior high school, and in some ways they're more sophisticated on some issues than people who are currently in high school. So sorry to tell you guys, but you're already being eaten by the younger, smarter generation. So what it means is that ability and focus and an awareness of what's actually going on right now tends to trump a lot of previous experiences. And I don't really see that changing. I think it's going to be harder and harder for people to stay current as the pace of things accelerates. Something to think about when you guys are looking at your own careers is to make sure you get in front of rather than get behind whatever structural changes are occurring in an industry that you're going into. For example, manufacturing. You know, in manufacturing, I think there are people who are figuring out right now how to connect their manufacturing capability all the way through to the consumer. And there are other people who are still thinking of themselves as, you know, job shops or production shops for some other third party who's building something that's used to make some other thing for some other market someplace.
Right.
And I think it's a really bad idea to be on the wrong side of that transition, that the people who understand how to use the fact that you can now connect to customers all over the world for the price of what used to be running an ad in a trade magazine for, you know, one region of the United States, that one of those businesses is going to help its employees be a lot more successful than the other business.
Right.
So when you're thinking about where you want to go, try to put yourself in a position to ride those kinds of transitions on the front end rather than the back end. In my own life, like I said, when I went to Microsoft, you know, we were this, at the time, this rinky-dink little company, but it just happened to be in front of this huge tsunami of the personal computer revolution. So I was just really lucky to have, you know, I could have gone and visited my sister rather than my brother, and I, you know, I'd probably be an MD nowadays, or I don't know what I would have ended up being. And that would have had a huge impact on where I ended up professionally.
Right.
I think you guys, I think it's a lot more obvious now that it's important to think strategically about where you go with your profession and make sure that the company is going to sort of well position you to be on the front of those kinds of structural changes.
Very cool. In about 1 minute, they're going to do the announcement. So when that happens, I'm going to mute it real quick so you don't hear, unless you want to hear what's for lunch tomorrow and hear about what's going on after school. I'll mute it.
It makes me nostalgic. So.
While we're doing it, anybody else? Oh, here they come. Hold on 1 second. You guys want to ask a question before the announcements go on, and then you can.
How about the guy in the Letterman jacket who's stretching?
Who needs a haircut? What's your name?
My name is Cameron. And how long does it normally take after you come up with an idea of a game until you release it? Like,
So it varies a lot. Like, how do you decide that a game is done? It's a lot harder to figure out when you know what the game needs to be. And each game will tend to have a bunch of different risks associated with it. Can you guys just wave if you can still hear me?
Of the United States of America.
So
and to the
figuring out
republic for which it stands,
how
one nation,
what the scope
under God,
and scale of the
indivisible,
game
with liberty and justice for all.
is one of the challenges, and we tend
Lunch tomorrow,
to.
chili cheese wrapper, quesadilla, corn, peaches, pumpkin bar,
You know,
milk,
you guys understand that you can either
sports night,
constrain
boys swimming section.
the number of people who work on a project, how long it
Kickboxing
takes
for
in
today
terms
has
of the
been canceled.
calendar, and how good
Trip
that project
earned
is,
honorable
right? You
mention
can constrain
honors
two, but
to
you
the
can't
first
constrain
annual
all
junior
three.
academic off
Right, if you say only 5
from the
people can
Indiana
work on
High
this,
School Wrestling
but it has to be a
Coaches
AAA game,
Congratulations to Trent for all his
both
hard
in
work and
terms of
accomplishments on
scale
the mat and in the
and
classroom.
quality.
Attention
You're-
students,
you know,
we need the missing
then
copies
it's
of
probably gonna
Boiler,
take you 10
Build
years
and
to build,
Stream, Motor
right?
and Trend, returned immediately to
And we
be
tend to
center.
always focus
If
on
not, those
quality at the
subscriptions will be
expense
canceled
of
for next year.
calendar
These
time, which
magazines
is
are for
both
everyone to enjoy,
a
not just
blessing and a curse about
Members of the
our-
girls' basketball
about
team
our
need
company.
to stop by the
We've
athletic
gotten
office
better
today to
about
sign
that in
safety
recent
cards.
years. I think the most disruption ever was around how long it took us to ship Half-Life 2.
Baseball will have open
all
gym
of the
tonight
drama that was
from 6 to
associated
8
with that.
p.m.
And
So what
there
I'm
will be
saying
a
is, how
baseball
long does it
parent
take? It
meeting
really
Monday,
depends
February
upon how long you
21st
want
at
it to
7
take
p.m.
and
in
how
the
long you can
lunchroom.
afford to spend on a specific project.
And FAY members.
I think that
We
nowadays
have the
it's
cake
important
raffle on
to
February
try to
22nd,
constrain your
next
projects
Tuesday.
as much as
Don't wait to
possible.
say something to Mom
Not
on
because
Monday.
you're trying
She
to
needs to
reduce
add this to
financial
her
risk,
grocery list this
but because you're trying to get your customers to tell you how to make the
And we are
product
still having the
better
cornhole and
as quickly as possible,
dodgeball tourneys
so you can
today.
iterate.
And tomorrow is hat day.
And that's one of the important characterists is to
The TBI
get
headliner
feedback
today
from
is
your
Chelsea,
customers
and
on
she was
what you're doing
nominated by
right and
Mr.
what
Walker.
you're doing wrong.
And the fun fact of the day is the profession most often portrayed by an
I'll pick another
Oscar-nominated
question.
actress is a prostitute. Have a nice day.
Since Steam doesn't have a physical presence like retailers like EB Games, how does it compete to grab people's attention?
So it turns out the best way to get other people to try out Steam is to use the people who are already using a game or using the service itself. So things like free weekends or guest passes are some of the best ways to get new people to try out Steam. It used to be, right, that you would go out and you'd buy a Super Bowl ad or you'd spend a bunch of money in other kinds of traditional media to promote yourself. And those things seem to be less effective with today's gamers than they used to be. New media is sort of scary. So we try to run experiments like with Facebook or Google AdWords, and they actually lose us money rather than make us money. And that's kind of stressful. What we find is the best partner we have to get new customers are our existing customers. So figuring out ways that we can help them help us get more customers is the best. That's part of the reason that we do updates. Is when somebody gets a free update to something, they get all excited and they start playing it again and they tell their friends a story about it, and that turns into new sales of the product.
Who's next? Go ahead, Evan.
I noticed many of the jobs at Valve require 3 or more years of experience in the business. How would you recommend one acquire that experience?
Those are just made up requirements, right? If somebody walked in and said, I have no formal experience, but here's this website I've been running and this series of Flash games that I've been developing, and here's the process by which they get better, then we'd say, awesome. The best way to start getting experience is don't wait for somebody to give you the opportunity. Put up a website, right? Try to figure out how many people are coming to your website. Try to figure out how to get more people to come to your website. Try some stuff. Make sure that you fail occasionally, because if you're not failing, then you probably aren't fully exploring your different options. That's how Facebook got started. It really was some project that Zuckerberg started in his dorm room. Michael Dell started Dell in his dorm room at university. So there's no reason that you guys can't do the same thing right now. And showing that you know how to do that, to build an audience for a property and evolve that property over time, is one of the best ways to get experience that will open doors for you. I think you have a better chance of being successful in our industry that way than by some of the classic methods, which are to come in through QA or try to come in through support. The reason for that is that at most companies, they put in all of these barriers to try to keep those people from moving out of QA and support. Like 90% of the people who go and get those kinds of entry-level jobs have the goal of not having those jobs. And so at some companies, you can actually get fired for trying to get out of support positions into the development organization, as strange as that sounds.
Huh.
Build a Flash game and ship it, make it better. and you'll get everybody's attention if you've got talent. And also make sure that the people who are working with you on it are the best people that you know how to find, because that'll have the biggest impact on your own success than just about any other decision you make.
All right, we had time for one more question, and then these guys got to go to their next class, which I know they don't want to, but who wants to finish it up? I know you got a bunch. Go ahead.
Can you explain the process you have to go through to take an idea and create it into a working project?
Really depends on the project. I mean, we've all been doing this for a long time, and so you get pretty good at thinking through what the issues are. That really is something where you have to do it a couple of times, and then, each project you adapt processes to each project. Sometimes you storyboard it, sometimes you prototype some aspect of the artificial intelligence, sometimes you do concept art. Really depends upon what the project is, and part of what you learn as you get more experienced is which tool to use. Do you pick up a hammer or a hacksaw? Well, it really depends upon what you're trying to do. And each project, it varies. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to this. And each time we have a new project, it represents a new set of technical, design, artistic, marketing challenges that are different and unique. And we really enjoy that. Otherwise, we get bored and kill ourselves. So it's part of the fun of working in the games industry that it's evolving really quickly. So I want to thank you guys for taking the time to talk to me today. It really is useful for me to get out of my office and connect with people who are at your stage in your careers. I was exactly where you were sitting. We didn't have video conferencing then, so it was harder to connect. But I was in your seats at one point, and it was really helpful to me to look into the future when talking to somebody like me, and it really helps me to connect back with where I came from in order to remind myself of where I need to be going in the future. So this is as valuable to me as hopefully it was valuable to you, so I thank you guys.
Well, and we thank you too. We understand you're extremely busy, and for somebody to take, almost an hour out of their time is just great. So, guys, we all say thank you, and thank you. What's the weather doing out there?
We have less snow, I think, than you do.
Okay, yeah, I think you do too.
We have more rain. So,
all right, good talking to you. See ya.